Hi, everybody. I'm Allison Freyberg, and this is Lecture 10, APA In-Text Citations. Now, this is a second in our series on APA formatting. At first, we did sort of how to set up your paper. Now we're going to do in-text citations. And then later on, we're going to do references. Let's go dive in, shall we? Okay, what is an in-text citation? In-text citations are the signals in the body of your paper where you're doing all your writing that say this is somebody else's idea. I'm going to show you a couple of ways to do that in the next few minutes, but that's what an in-text citation is. What sources need to be cited in text? Any idea that isn't yours, any idea that isn't yours, any idea that isn't yours and isn't common knowledge needs to be cited. And if you don't cite other people's ideas, that's when we start getting into plagiarism territory. Now, in the next lecture, we're going to do a deep dive into plagiarism and really figure out what's going on and why it happens and how we can really avoid it. But for now, I just want to look at the technical side of citations. Okay. I will say right now, you don't need to cite any information that is common knowledge for your audience. And again, in the plagiarism lecture, we're going to talk about what constitutes common knowledge, but it's basically what 8 out of 10 people in your audience would know. Okay, so it really is audience specific, but it really needs to be kind of a well-known idea and a well-accepted idea. And if you're in doubt, just cite the source. Okay, I will direct you to the APA style site itself. They've revamped it and it is fantastic. It's really set up well. And if you go to the tab on in-text citations, which by the way is right here as a live link, so in your document, in your PDF that you get, you can just click on that live link and it'll take you to this place and on the APA site, where this is what you'll see. You'll see all the information about in-text citations. You'll see parenthetical versus narrative, basic principles, paraphrasing, quotations, communications, all sorts of stuff, right? And there's even more than this stuff. It's much more than you'll ever need. And I'm going to try to go over the stuff you will absolutely need. But please get yourself comfortable with this site. Go there, poke around a little bit, know where to find things. Okay, I will take a moment here before we get into the lecture about plagiarism to just say that this is how APA defines plagiarism. And I think in a lot of the discussions of plagiarism, we're really taking a punitive approach, like, oh, it's really bad, and you'll fail your paper and you get kicked out of school, and all these terrible things will happen to you. And but we never really kind of explain why it's such a big thing in university. And I like to explain it this way, that in a lot of ways, university and academic work is about one thing. We may call it history, physics, art, English, business, management, leadership, all the disciplines, all the types of courses you're going to take. We call them all sorts of different things, but they're really about one thing. And that is our ability to confront the ideas and debates and conversations that have come before us, and our need really to find a way to contribute to those existing conversations. People have been talking about stuff for a long time. We're trying to get in on that conversation. So that's why it's really important that we signal, hey, that's somebody else's idea, because in a very collaborative way, by acknowledging the ideas of others, you're creating space for you to contribute your own ideas, or to find a place at that table to talk and to contribute. So that's how I want to talk about citation work as we move forward. All right, some basics, and this is like I said, the more technical version of the citing sources. These are the basic elements. Any sort of, that's the reference list entry. We are going to do references later, so just hang on, don't worry. But in the body of your text, you'll have something either called a parenthetical citation, where the information that's necessary appears in parentheses, and that's why we call it parenthetical. Or a narrative citation, and this one's a little funkier because look, there's parentheses. But what happens is a narrative citation occurs, like you're talking about the authors in your sentences. They're part of your sentence. So usually it's this kind of format. There's the author and then the dates in parentheses. We're going to do a bunch of examples. When you're bringing other people's ideas into your work, you can bring them in one of two ways. You can, number one, paraphrase their ideas. And that means you are summarizing their ideas. You are explaining their ideas in your own words, in your own syntax, in your own organization, in your own voice. It's you. It's just their idea. And you signal that a certain way. Specifically, you need to include the author, who is responsible for this work, and the date. When was the work published? Okay, so that's the stuff you want to really focus on and include. Let's look at a couple of examples. How about this one? This first one here where the yellow dot is. A structural shift was isolated as the primary reason for increased work hours in the US. That's an idea. Whose idea is it? It is Shore's idea from an article published in 2015. And I know that that's Shore's idea from 2015 because I've included, in this case, a parenthetical citation. Now, this sentence that I read, in order for that to be a good paraphrase, it has to be my words, my kind of writing a sentence, my voice, the way I organize things. It just happens to be Shore's idea. And I say, hey, this idea that I brought in here, not mine, Shore's. See that? There we go. Now, a narrative citation paraphrase would look something like this. According to Shore, 2015, a structural shift is the reason behind increased U.S. work hours. Okay, so you have Shore, the author is in the sentence itself, so the date goes in parentheses right by the author. APA really likes to have authors and dates near each other. You can find much more about paraphrasing, of course, in this live link that I've included for you from the PDF. The other way you can bring sources in is through quotations. Now, a quotation is that author's exact words, exact sentence, exact phrase. You're not changing the words. And for this kind of citation, you need the author and the date, like you did with the paraphrase. But the extra bit of information you need is the location. Where does this appear? Because these are exact words from that author. They appeared somewhere. It is incumbent upon you as a writer to tell us where they came from. Now, here's a couple of examples. Parker, 2014, argues that, and then anytime you have a quote, you have to have quotation marks. Open your quote. Globalization practices exceed the labor demand. Close the quotes and the page. So look what you have here. This is a narrative citation because the author is referenced in the sentence itself, not just in the parentheses. So Parker, and since APA likes dates besides authors, there we go. We put the date in parentheses right beside. Argues that, now these are Parker's exact words, so I've put them in quotation marks, and now the only thing I have left to include in this citation is the location. So there's the location. And for APA, you do a small p period, and then the page that it appears on, you close your parentheses, and look at this. Period is right there. It is not inside the quotation marks. Okay, so that's the format. Here's another way of doing it. Globalization practices exceed labor demand, argues Parker. Now, we have 4 ingredients, right? We have author, date, location, and the quotation marks. Okay, here's the quotation marks. So this is the quote. Here's the author. What's left? Date and location. So that's why you have 2 things inside the parentheses at the end there. Because we've gotten to the end of the sentence, and the only thing that's in the sentence is the actual quote and the author. There's 2 things missing, so they go in the parentheses, just like that. And the third example here, there's a quote. Here's the author, Marquez, 2019, argues that, open quotations, blah, 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 blah. But in this case, I might have found it online, and this version of online might not have page numbers. So in that sense, you can't paragraphs, and this is the citation format for that. Author, date, quotation marks, holding your quote in there. So the only thing that's left needed in the italics is the location, and there's the location. You can find a lot more about quotations, a lot more explanation, a lot more examples right here at the live link on APA. Okay, now what happens? You're going to refer to an author several times in a paper, right? Okay, so in that sense, what are you going to do? Do you keep repeating author date? Well, as a matter of fact, yeah, you do. Unless it's really, really, really obvious that you're still referring to that writer. Let's look at a couple of examples. Now, even if it's really, really obvious, like you're starting with Marquez et al. So this is by more than one author. This is Marquez et al. They argue blah, blah, because it doesn't matter. It's a paraphrase, right? Because there's no quotation marks. So blah, blah is all my words. But then I need to do something to signal that what I'm saying afterwards is still their idea. And I did that by saying they. And when I say they, there, I know I'm referring back to them, to Marquez et al. So I don't need Marquez et al. 2018 at the end of this sentence because I've signaled it already. Same here. Blah, blah, blah. Again, I'm paraphrasing Marquez et al. There it is in one sentence. In the next sentence, will I need to say Marquez et al. At the end in parentheses? No, because I've added this signal here. Results of the study concluded, blah, blah, blah. Well, which study? Obviously this study. If you are at all unsure, go ahead and put the author date citation in there. If you're writing a longer piece, for example, and the Marquez et al. Article appears on page 2, and then it comes back on page 10, you better reintroduce them a little bit and make sure your citations are there. Right? When in doubt, cite. Okay? And it's only in these kinds of situations that you can use these kinds of signals to not have to put things in parentheses. In-text citations. Numbers of authors. Now, please, please, please don't memorize this. But this is a handy little chart, and APA in its newest edition has simplified this enormously. If it's one author that you're working with, like the article you're working with was written by one person, then this is what a parenthetical citation would look like. This is what a narrative citation would look like. If it's 2 authors, this is what a parenthetical citation would look like. This is what a narrative citation would look like. If it's 3 authors, like Marquez et al., or more, so 7 authors, 3 authors, 5 authors, it's going to be the first author and then et al. And then the date. This will be a parenthetical citation. This is your narrative citation. And now let's say you have group authors or organizational authors. Here you go, your first citation, and this has an abbreviation. So, and the National Institute of Mental Health has an abbreviation NIMH. So that's the format you would do the first time you bring them in, and then thereafter you can just do the abbreviation. And same thing for the narrative format. Now, if it's a group author without an abbreviation, then you're always just going to do it like the organization is the author. Okay? Don't memorize this. Print it out. Have it handy. All right. Secondary sources. This happens when, let's say we're reading the Marquez et al. Article, and they end up citing an article and are quoting an article that really intrigues you, and you're like, oh, this is a great idea. It's not Marquez et al.'s idea, but it's someone they're bringing into their paper, and you really like that idea, and you want to bring it into your paper. So how do you cite, the question I always get is, how do you cite a source within a source or a quote within a quote? My best advice is don't. Go find the original source, right? Because let's say that source within a source was Parker. We've talked about Parker as an earlier example. Well, if you really like Parker's idea, go read Parker's text, right? Don't just rely on somebody else's use of Parker. Go find Parker. That's good research. Lousy research is borrowing third-party quotes like this. That said, occasionally, that might happen. And if on that rare occasion when that happens, this is how you would do it. Blah, blah, blah is my paraphrase of Rabbit's idea, and Rabbit was cited in Lyon et al. 2014. Okay. I'm not going to spend too much time on that because I really don't want to encourage it. If you want to find out more from APA, you just go right here. And that brings us to the end of the technical portion of in-text citations for APA format. I will see you in the next lecture.